Okay, so I will not delay in getting to our member of parliament for Carlton, Pierre Poilievre, who's been very outspoken, and it's refreshing to see some voices speaking on behalf of Canadian resources in parliament because there's not nearly enough, and we've got some very serious problems there. So I will hand it off to you, Pierre, and thank you very much for joining us today.
A great pleasure to be with such a distinguished group. I see my former colleague, Dan McTeague, one of the great parliamentarians of the Chrétien Martin and early Harper era, along with many Jeff Callaway, a great Western entrepreneur, and many other great Canadians who champion the working people of our country. And it is for them that we should be most concerned in this debate over our resource sector. Let's start off by being clear that the anti-energy agenda of the current government has not harmed investors or capitalists or large corporations, all of whom are capable of simply moving their capital to pro-development jurisdictions elsewhere. They are building pipelines, they are digging mines, they are extracting oil and gas from the ground. They're just doing it in faraway jurisdictions rather than here. So it is only the taxpayer and the worker in Canada that loses as a result of this anti-energy agenda of our current government. I don't need to go through the inventory of decisions the government has made that has prevented our sector from profiting and employing people over the last 5 years. Suffice it to say that the oil industry never recovered from the 2014 price downturn, even though the price recovered only a few years after that. In other words, we have had moderate and now even high prices for oil since roughly 2017. And according to many estimates, those prices are rising further still. And yet, our sector has been in perilous decline until now. But to go over the decisions the government has made on Bill C-69, the No New Pipelines Bill, or the offshore export ban from the Northwest British Columbia, or the deliberate slow death of the Energy East pipeline, or countless other failures, would be a waste of time, because I believe that your audience already knows these things. I actually want to bring you a positive message, not optimistic versus pessimistic, but realistic, because I am ultimately a realist. And my realist view of the sector is a very bright one. Let me tell you why. It is obvious that we have the third largest, depending on how you calculate it, the third largest reserves of marketable and technologically accessible petroleum on planet Earth. And it is obvious also that we have 1,220 trillion cubic feet of natural gas that the world desperately needs in its move away from coal to electrify itself and industrialize the developing world. What is not obvious is that we can exploit these and use these resources to our benefit because we have failed over the last 5 years to do it. But I believe that those failures are going to come to an end. And let me tell you why. One, the oil sector in Western Canada has become extremely efficient, very lean, because they've had to be. The days of milk and honey that we witnessed from the late 1980s right through to 2014 with the one dip in the Great Global Recession, that period has been erased. So the days when business could simply spend money in all directions are over. And so the sector has reduced its cost and become extremely efficient at extracting bitumen from the oil sands And it has done so around the obstacles that the federal government has put in place, to the point where our businesses in Western Canada actually can profit even with modest $50 a barrel prices. Imagine what they can do if prices stay at $70 a barrel. Furthermore, the easy oil and gas from the shale basins of the United States are gone. The fall off rate for energy in US shale is extremely high. In other words, it gushes to the surface after it's the original fracking. But after a short period of time, the energy recovery from those shale geological structures falls dramatically. That does not happen in our oil sands. In fact, once you've made the original capital investment, either for an open pit oil sands mine or for an in situ project, you can continue to harvest those barrels one after the other with very little fall off. So yes, it is true that the American fracking projects are much more cash positive upfront, but that is a short-term, if instant gratification that does not last. And as we see, the Americans are the American energy industry overinvested and is no longer able to produce rates of return that justify the high levels of cash that poured into the American sector. Now, that's important to us because, of course, 99% of our exports are to the United States of America. So if it is not able to continue producing at the same rates that it has over the last decade, then that raises the price, which, as we know, counterintuitively, is, when it comes to Western Canada Select, in a sense, a continental price. So that's the first piece of good news. Furthermore, the OPEC countries have made it clear they're no longer going to subsidize American oil production by keeping the price, by allowing the Americans to dovetail off of their supply limitations. And so they obviously made the mistake of getting into a price war with the Russians in March of 2020, bringing us negative oil prices for the first, and I submit, last time ever. That is never going to happen again. If our industry survived negative oil prices, then imagine what it can do now that prices are back up to $70 a barrel. I submit to you that we can do better than anyone. And finally, our industry, because it was needed, because it had to, made massive investments in greening its operations. And now, by any objective measurement, we are the greenest and cleanest oil and gas sector on planet Earth. So the push towards environmentalism, where it is actually environmentalism and not just grandstanding or public policy profiteering, like we've seen from liberal insiders, should favor the Western oil and gas sector, because we can prove that by every single metric, we are the best, we are the cleanest, and we are the greenest. And finally, the demand for natural gas is nearly insatiable in Asia. And we have a climate in which liquefaction is advantageous, because liquefaction is the process of cooling a gas into a liquid. And we are closer to Asia than are many of the ports departing from the United States of America. In other words, we have geographical and meteorological advantages in getting our gas liquefied and into markets of billions of customers. So all of this requires the government remove the regulatory obstacles to development and to make us the fastest place on planet Earth where energy investors can get a project approved and get product moving. So all we need to do then is to get ourselves a new government that is committed to that enterprise. And I believe we will see a massive renaissance of our energy sector to the benefit of the entire country. So that is the positive message of optimism that I wish to bring to all of you. And I now look forward to hearing any questions or comments you might want to share. Thank you very much, Corey.
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll see if anybody's got questions or statements they'd like to make in the scroll on the right there. And again, it's so we've heard so little of energy issues in Ottawa in our parliament. So it's good that somebody's taking up the cause over there, and not even an Albertan MP for that matter. So it really is appreciaed.
Although I was born and raised in Alberta, so.
Yes, I know you have deep connections out here. Absolutely. So, well, we are looking forward to perhaps having the opportunity to change our governments out this year. We really feel we need it. Somebody, and actually, as Mary Ellen has asked, so it's something that's constantly big, though. We talk a lot. We talk here, it's big news in the West, but how do we drive this home to Ontario and Quebec? Because it just doesn't seem like it's a priority over there. And that's where Westerners start getting grumpy and feeling a little left out, I guess you could say.
Well, I'll tell you about the political dynamic of energy in central Canada. A lot of Westerners think that Ontarians are against the energy sector. That's not true. And I can prove it. The polling shows that something like 2/3 of Ontarians believe we need to construct more pipelines. The majority of Quebecers believe that as long as we're consuming oil, and they are consuming something like 300,000 barrels a day, that it should be Canadian oil. What Trudeau has done, this is what something that the people in the sector at West don't understand that he's done. He hasn't argued against their sector. What he has done is pretended that he's trying his best to support it, but that circumstances are getting in the way. So he never admitted that he killed Energy East. He continues to claim that it was because oil prices were low that day that TransCanada canceled the project. He even tried to deny retroactively that he vetoed the Northern Gateway pipeline. So he also didn't take credit for killing the Tech Frontier mine. He simply claimed that, Tech changed its mind and they moved on. So if he were so proud of, and he believed it was so politically popular to attack energy, he'd be doing it directly. He wouldn't do it through these surreptitious and dishonest strategies that he, under advice of Gerald Butts, have deployed. The reason why they pretend they support Western energy is not because they want support in the West. They know they have none. It's because they understand that Ontarians generally support responsible resource development. So what they're actually doing is pretending to support the industry, but through a complex and dishonest set of actions, killing the industry surreptitiously. So your challenge is not to convince Ontarians that the energy sector is good. You already have done that. Your challenge is to expose the fact that the Prime Minister is deliberately killing all of these jobs, which I can tell you will be unpopular across the country, including in my riding, where on the doorstep, I'd say 2/3 of the time when someone brings up a pipeline, it's in support of it. And I'm an Ottawa MP. So if we can win in Ottawa, we can win anywhere.
Well, great. And thank you very much. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I gain a few more gray hairs every time I hear somebody say, market forces killed Energy East, market forces killed Tech. No, markets wanted to invest in those and regulation made it unviable. That's the exact opposite of market forces.
Exactly.
That was government intervention through regulation. So I know your time was limited, so I really appreciate your appearance and speaking on it so that we do know there's voices in Ottawa trying, and we may have the opportunity to turn this around this year, because the country's coming into a period of recovery from the pandemic and so many other things, and it's really a time when we need to be developing and expanding our industries rather than trying to shut them in. So thank you very much again. And Mike there in the comments is also saying he really loves your work in Parliament.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thanks to everyone else who's on the call today. You have lots of friends in Central Canada, or out east, as you like to say, in Alberta. And I look forward to joining with all of you in person to continue this effort. And I see Drew Barnes as well. My best wishes to you in all of your work in the legislature.